Most people count heartbeats. I counted days. 1,095. That's how long it takes to turn a marriage into a crime scene, without spilling a single drop of blood. My husband thought he was trading a discarded wife for $100 million kingdom. He didn't realize that in this game, I didn't just play the board, I built it. And today, the $36 million blood debt he didn't know he signed finally came due. Thatcher saw a broken woman. But while he was busy looking for a new queen, I was busy rewriting the rules of his kingdom. To understand how he lost it all, we have to go back 10 years, to the day I became his North Star, and the long, cold nights I spent realizing I was actually his shadow. I am Maren. I'm recording this from a place Thatcher will never find. But I'm curious how far a shadow can reach. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see exactly how far my story has traveled, and who else is listening.
10 years. 3,650 days of being Thatcher's perfect wife. In the beginning, I thought it was love. I was young, only 22, and he was the rising star of the logistics world. He promised me a life of adventure, a life where I would never have to worry about a single bill. He told me I was his North Star. But as the years passed, the North Star became a shadow. Thatcher's business grew, and so did his ego. He stopped seeing me as a partner and started seeing me as an accessory, something to be worn at dinner parties and then put back in the closet when the guests left. I managed the house. I managed the gala invitations. I managed the private school applications for our daughter, Willa. And for a long time, I managed my own loneliness. Everything changed on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are for ordinary things: laundry, grocery lists, soccer practice for Willa. They aren't supposed to be for life-ending explosions. I was in the kitchen, making a salad, listening to the soft hum of the dishwasher. It was a peaceful sound, the sound of a perfect life. Then Thatcher walked in. He didn't take off his coat. He didn't kiss me. He didn't even say hello. He just set a heavy blue folder on the marble island. "I'm moving Sloan in on Friday," he said. He didn't say, "I want a divorce." He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He just stated it as a fact of logistics. Sloan. I knew the name. She was his new vice president of marketing. 25 years old. Teeth as white as piano keys and a heart as cold as an ice cube. Thatcher thinks he's moving a queen into his castle, but he doesn't realize Maren has already turned the locks. If your husband brought a Sloan into your home, would you walk out or would you stay to watch the house burn from the inside? Type nightmare. If you think Sloan is about to find out exactly why they call Maren the architect. Thatcher looked at me with a cold, detached pity. I've outgrown this, Maren. I've outgrown you. I need a new era partner, someone who can keep up with the brand I'm building. He scanned our kitchen, the home I had spent years decorating, like he was looking at a trash heap. I want the firm, the mountain estate, the cars, and the offshore accounts. All of it. I built it, so it belongs to me. I felt the air leave my lungs. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by a giant, invisible hand. "And Willa?" I whispered. "What about our daughter?" Thatcher didn't even flinch. He poured himself a glass of water, not offering me any. "You keep the kid. She's a distraction to the pace I need to move at now. She's dead weight to the brand." He called his own flesh and blood dead weight. That's a mistake you don't come back from. In a game of high-stakes revenge, is there any limit to what a mother should do to protect her child's future? Type protect. If you believe Marin should take every single cent and leave him with nothing but the clothes on his back. Dead weight. My 10-year-old daughter, who looked just like him, was dead weight. That was the moment the perfect wife died, and the architect was born. Most women would have screamed. Most women would have thrown the salad bowl at his head. I just stood there, my hands trembling under the counter, where he couldn't see them. I looked at him and said, "Okay, you can have it all. Just let me stay until the end of the month to pack. I don't want to scare Willa." He laughed. A short, cruel sound that bounced off the cold marble walls. "I always knew you were a doormat, Marin. Fine, 30 days, but don't touch anything that isn't yours." He had no idea that for the last 3 years, I had been touching everything. It started when Thatcher began working late every Thursday. I wasn't stupid. I knew he was seeing someone, but back then, I didn't care about the women. I cared about the numbers. Thatcher was a creature of habit. He thought he was a genius, but geniuses are usually predictable. He used the same biometric sequence for his home office safe that he used for his first ever $1 million deal. I had watched him enter it from the doorway while pretending to bring him coffee. Inside that safe, I didn't find love letters. I found a black leather ledger. It was filled with names of shell companies I had never heard of. Names like Cerulean Holdings and Pacific Drift. These weren't logistics clients. These were the ghost investors of Singapore. Thatcher was moving money, lots of it, in ways that didn't show up on the company's public audits. He was laundering funds for a group of international financiers who didn't use banks. They used blood clauses. 3 years. Marin has lived in the shadows of her own home, collecting secrets like glass shards. Most people would have snapped by now. Do you think Thatcher's ghost investors are more dangerous than a wife who has nothing left to lose? Type legal. If you think she should go to the police, or lit, if you want to see her handle it her way. Friday came, and so did Sloane. She walked through my front door wearing a coat that cost as much as my car. She didn't look at me. She looked at the crown molding. She touched my hand-painted vases with her sharp, blood-red nails and smirked at Thatcher. "It's a bit traditional, isn't it?" she asked. "Don't worry," Thatcher replied, loud enough for me to hear from the hallway. "We're gutting the place once she's gone." Then came Genevieve, Thatcher's mother, the matriarch of the sterling name. She arrived with a roll of industrial trash bags. She didn't offer a hug. She didn't offer an apology for her son's behavior. She just handed me the bags and pointed toward the master closet. "Thatcher needs a partner who matches the global titan image he's projected, Marin. You were a starter wife, a relic. Take your daughter and go quietly. It's the only dignity you have left." Genevieve handed her a trash bag and called her disposable. This is the moment most people give up. But look at Marin's face. Is that a tear, or is it the look of a hunter who just saw their prey walk into the snare? Type chess. If you want to see Genevieve lose the very empire she's trying to protect. I took the trash bags. I smiled at her. "Thank you, Genevieve. You're right. It's time for a change." I went to the closet and started packing. But I wasn't just packing clothes. I was packing the thousands of pages of documents I had spent 3 years photocopying in the dead of night. I was packing the evidence of the blood clause. You see, Thatcher's company wasn't actually making a profit. It was a giant, beautiful, hollow shell. He had been borrowing millions from the ghost investors to pay for Sloane's jewelry and Genevieve's art collection. But the Singapore group had a very specific rule in their contracts. If the owner of the firm tried to hide assets during a divorce, or if the leadership changed without their approval, the interest on the debt would double instantly, and the investors would come to collect in person. By giving him everything, I wasn't being a doormat. I was handed him a ticking nuclear bomb with a very short fuse. I hired a lawyer named Vance. He was a man who lived for the fight, a shark in a pinstripe suit. He slammed his fist on his desk when I told him my plan. "Marin, you're waiving $50 million? You're leaving yourself with nothing. I can get you the house. I can get you half the firm." I looked at Vance and gave him the most important instruction of my life. "Vance, I want you to argue just enough to make it look like we're losing. I want you to make Thatcher feel like he's crushing me. And then I want you to fold." He thought I was crazy. But I knew Thatcher. Thatcher only felt safe when he felt superior. I needed him to feel so powerful that he stopped looking at the fine print. The month passed in a blur of humiliation. Sloane moved her things into my bedroom. Genevieve sat at my dining table and planned a victory gala. I slept in the guest room with Willa, telling her stories about the ocean and the new life we were going to have. Every day, Thatcher would walk past me and smirk. "Still here, Marin? Counting down the days?" "Just making sure everything is perfect for you, Thatcher," I'd say. The day of the final hearing arrived. Courtroom 9 was cold. Thatcher was wearing a new, custom-tailored suit. Sloane was in the front row, already posting photos of her new palace on social media. Genevieve sat next to her, looking at me with pure, frozen pity. The judge, a woman who had seen 1,000 divorces, looked at the paperwork with confusion. "Mrs. Sterling, you are waiving all rights to the Sterling Logistics Group? You are waiving the estate? You understand that you are leaving this marriage with only a small cash settlement, and your daughter?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. My voice was as steady as a heartbeat. "I just want Thatcher to have exactly what he deserves." Thatcher couldn't hide his grin. He snatched the silver pen and signed the papers with a flourish, his signature large and arrogant. He thought he had just won the greatest prize of his life. He thought he had erased me. And then, the heavy double doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. It wasn't the police. It wasn't the FBI. It was 2 men in gray suits. They walked down the center aisle, their footsteps echoing on the marble floor. They walked straight to Thatcher's lawyer and handed him a single sheet of paper. That was the moment. The moment the lawyer's face turned into cold stone. He whispered those 5 words. "They know about the ledger. The gray suits have arrived. The room just dropped 10 degrees. Thatcher finally has everything he asked for. But is everything worth more than his life? If you were his lawyer and you knew what was in that briefcase, would you run or stay to watch the end? Type justice if you're screaming at your screen right now." The ghost investors weren't waiting for a court date. They didn't care about marital assets. They cared about the fact that by claiming sole ownership of the firm 5 minutes ago, Thatcher had officially declared himself the only person responsible for the $18 million debt. And because he had hidden assets from them to pay for Sloane's lifestyle, the blood clause had been triggered. The debt was now $36 million. And the gray suits were there to take the company, and Thatcher, to a private meeting to discuss the repayment. As the gray suits stood there, waiting, I walked over to Genevieve. She was shaking so hard her pearls snapped, scattering across the floor like tiny white skulls. "The second ledger, Genevieve," I whispered. "The one you kept in the secret compartment of your jewelry box? I didn't give it to the Singapore group. I gave it to someone much more interested in your history." "Who?" she gasped, her voice a ghost of itself. "Your ex-husband," I said. The man you told everyone was dead 20 years ago, so you could claim his family's land and inheritance. The man you tried to erase, just like Thatcher tried to erase me. He's waiting in the lobby with the federal marshals. It turns out, faking a death for insurance money is a very serious crime. The look on Genevieve's face wasn't just pale. It was the look of someone who realized they had been haunted by a ghost for 2 decades, and the ghost finally had a pair of handcuffs. I walked out of that courtroom. I didn't look back at Thatcher, who was being led out the back exit by the men in gray suits. I walked down the courthouse steps and took a deep breath of the rain-scented air. My lawyer, Vance, was waiting for me at the curb. He looked at me with a mixture of fear and absolute respect. "Marin, I just got the word from the IRS whistleblower office because you provided the data for the international money laundering sting, and because the total recovery is over $200 million. He swallowed hard, his hands shaking as he looked at his phone. "Your reward is $30 million. It's already being transferred into the trust for Willa. It's clean, it's yours, and no sterling creditor can ever touch it." I got into my car. Willa was in the back seat, holding her favorite stuffed rabbit. She looked at me and smiled, a real bright smile. "Are we going to the beach now, Mommy? The place with the shells?" "Yes, baby," I said, starting the engine. "We're going to the beach, and we're never coming back to the shadows." But the twist goes deeper than even Thatcher could imagine. Because while I was driving toward the ocean, my phone buzzed with one final message from an unknown number. It was a photo of a man standing on a beach in Scotland, the man Genevieve thought she had killed. But do you think the past is truly behind her? Type "stay safe" if you think she should keep looking over her shoulder. As any survivor will tell you, the hardest part of a 3-year war isn't the battle itself. It's the silence that follows when the guns stop firing. 2 weeks later, the salt air of the coast was beginning to heal the parts of me that Thatcher and Genevieve had spent a decade trying to rot. I had bought a small, nameless house on a cliff in northern Maine. It wasn't a sterling house. It had no marble, no gold-plated faucets, and no cameras in the crown molding. It just had a porch and the sound of the Atlantic Ocean crashing against the rocks. Willa was finally sleeping through the night. The dark circles under her eyes were gone. I was sitting on the porch, a cup of black coffee in my hands, when a black sedan appeared on the coastal road. My heart didn't race. I didn't panic. I just set my cup down. I had spent 1,095 days prepared for this. The car stopped at the end of the long gravel driveway. A man stepped out. He wasn't a gray suit. He wasn't a federal marshal. He was tall, wearing a heavy wool coat, and his hair was as white as the foam on the waves. It was Arthur Sterling, Thatcher's father. The man the world thought had died in a fiery wreck 20 years ago. The man Genevieve had mourned while spending his blood money. He walked up the porch steps, his boots echoing on the wood. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask for a hug. He just stood at the railing and looked out at the water. "The Atlantic is colder than the North Sea," he said, his voice a deep, gravelly rumble. "But it has the same way of making you feel small. That's why I like it." I looked at him, my grip tightening on my coffee. "You stayed away for 20 years, Arthur. Why come back now? Why help me bury them?" He turned to look at me, and I saw the same steel in his eyes that I had discovered in my own mirror. "Because Genevieve didn't just try to kill me, Marin. She tried to erase the man I was." He looked out at the horizon again, his expression unreadable. "She turned my son into a monster in my image. I watched from the shadows as she fed Thatcher's greed until it consumed him." He paused, a heavy silence hanging between us. I couldn't stop her then. "But when I saw you, this quiet girl from a common background, start to dig into the ledgers." He gave a slow, respectful nod. I realized the Sterling family finally had a real architect. You did what I couldn't. You finished her. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather-bound journal. He set it on the table next to my coffee. Thatcher and Genevieve are in cells, but they aren't the end of the rot. His voice dropped an octave, turning cold. The ghost investors in Singapore? They weren't just laundering money. They were buying politicians. They were buying judges. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. And they are very, very angry that a starter wife cost them $200 million. My blood ran cold, but I kept my face as still as a frozen lake. What are you saying, Arthur? I'm saying that the reward money the IRS gave you is a target on your back. He looked at the end of the driveway, where the black sedan sat idling. The men in gray suits don't just go away because a gavel strikes a block. They are looking for the second ledger. He looked back at me, his eyes piercing. The one you told Genevieve you gave to the marshals. But we both know you didn't give them everything, did you? I looked at the journal. I gave the authorities enough to put them away for life, I whispered. The rest is my insurance policy. It's a dangerous policy, Arthur said, stepping back toward the stairs. But you've proven you know how to handle fire. I didn't come here to threaten you, Marin. He gestured toward the idling car. I came here to tell you that the black sedan at the end of the road isn't mine. It belongs to the man who actually funded the Singapore project. His next words hit me like a physical blow. A man Thatcher never even met. A man who makes Genevieve look like an amateur. He walked down the steps and disappeared into the fog. I stood up and walked inside. I checked on Willa, then went to my desk. I pulled out a small silver burner phone. I pressed the only contact. He's here, I said into the receiver. I know, a voice answered. A voice that was sharp, young, and filled with a cold, familiar ambition. Sloan. Sloan was working for Marin the entire time. Did you see that coming? Type checkmate. To salute the architect of the year. 3 years ago, I didn't look for a lawyer. I looked for a rival. I found Sloan working in a low-level firm, drowning in debt. Sloan wasn't Thatcher's partner. She was my spy. I was the one who told her exactly what perfume to wear and what lies to tell him. The man in the sedan is Vane, Sloan whispered. He's the one Genevieve was really working for. He doesn't want the money, Marin. He wants the fourth key. I looked down at the floorboards. Let him think that. I'm ready. I used the gold fourth key I had found in the safe. I didn't find gold inside. I found a digital recorder. I walked to the front door and threw it wide open. The headlights of the sedan turned off. A man in a tailored suit stepped out into the rain. He walked toward my porch, a smile playing on his lips. He thought he was the apex predator. He had no idea that I had already called the one group even he couldn't bribe. The local fishermen. 12 men, all of whom had lost their pensions to Thatcher's firm, were currently standing in the tree line with rifles, waiting for my signal. As Vane reached the bottom step, I held up the silver phone. One click, Vane. One click, and the ghost ledger goes live on every server in Singapore. He stopped. The smile vanished. You're bluffing, Marin. You'd never risk your daughter's safety. My daughter is already on a boat 5 miles out, Vane. My father-in-law is at the helm. I leaned over the railing, my voice a cold whisper. You're the only one left in the trap. The 12 men stepped out of the shadows. Vane turned around, seeing the wall of human justice closing in. The federal marshals vaulted over the porch railing a second later. As Vane was led away in chains, screaming about his empire, I walked back into my house and closed the door. The silence was finally absolute. I am Marin. I am no longer the invisible wife. I am the woman who won. The architect has finished the building. Justice is served. If there is one thing the Sterling family learned too late, it is this. Never mistake a woman's silence for her surrender. A silent woman isn't empty. She is observing. She is calculating. She is building a world where your arrogance is the only brick she needs to bury you. Thatcher thought he was trading up for a new era, but he forgot that empires aren't built on vanity. They are held together by the people you think are dead weight. The sweetest revenge isn't the handcuffs, the courtrooms, or the look on their faces when the gray suits arrive. No. The sweetest revenge is the moment you walk away with your self-respect 100% intact, breathing air they can no longer reach, and living a life so beautiful it makes their entire empire look like a pile of cheap ashes. Maren didn't just win the game. She walked away and started a new one where she is the only player that matters. Stay silent, stay sharp, and never, ever let them see the architect until the building is already falling. What was the most breathtaking twist for you in this life story? Comment below and subscribe to Revenge Stories Headquarters for the next masterpiece.